What do you get when you have a race series with almost no rules? Where you can overdose on the crazy juice and create whatever mad invention your mind can imagine. Where you can have the fastest, most powerful, most ballistic road racing cars on the planet. I'll tell you what you get. You get the Can-Am, the Canadian American Challenge Cup. Now, the Can-Am spanned 1966 through to 1974, so 9 seasons. And well, it basically ate itself alive. And that's kind of what happens when you allow massive creative freedom. And that's also why most modern championships are so tightly controlled. Now, as you'd expect, people often refer to the cars that raced in the Can-Am series as Can-Am cars. And yes, that's true, because they were built to race in the Can-Am series. But officially, they were FIA Group 7 cars. And those are the rules that were used by the SCCA and the CASC for the Can-Am. Now, the Can-Am wasn't actually alone in using FIA Group 7 rules. They were used briefly in Great Britain in the early and mid-1960s, and in the European Interserie, which began in 1970. But the best use of FIA Group 7 regs outside of the Can-Am was in Japan. Yes, Japan! Now, car racing wasn't really a thing in Japan until 1963 in the very first running of the Japan Grand Prix. This was held at the Suzuka track, which was owned by Honda, and it first opened in 1962. Now, the Japan Grand Prix was actually a sports car race, and in the early years there was no Japanese manufacturer that could actually take it to the imports. The Japanese wins came mainly in the support races, such as the K-car race for cars up to 600 cc's. In 1966, the Grand Prix was moved to the new Mount Fuji Speedway track and was now run to FIA Group 4 regulations. Now, Nissan had just purchased the Prince Motor Company, and Prince had a neat little mid-engine car, it's actually a Group 4 car, called the R380. You've probably heard of the Nissan Skyline. Well, that car actually started life as the Prince Skyline. And Nissan's main rival Toyota had its new sports car, the 2000 GT. The Prince 380 won the Japan Grand Prix in 1966, and then in 67 it was won by a Porsche 906. And then in 68 the Grand Prix moved to FIA Group 7 regs, same as the Can-Am. And now Nissan and Toyota, who was partnering with Yamaha, really went to town. And the rate at which they progressed was mind-boggling. The first Nissan Group 7 car was called the R381. Now, it used a steel tube frame chassis, and it was supposed to be powered by a 5-litre V12 motor designed and developed by Prince Motor Company. But delays with the V12 meant the R381 was actually powered by a small block Chevy V8, which was developed by Dean Moon. Now, the R381's party trick was its aero stabilizer. This was a pair of wings mounted at the rear and linked through a central rod. Each was attached to a rear hub, and it moved in accordance to the suspension movement on that side, but separately to the other wing on the other side. It's a pretty clever trick. Meanwhile, Toyota arrived with the 415S, which had a 3-litre V8 developed by Yamaha. And this little motor was a work of art. Compared to the Nissan, the Toyota looked a little outdated, kind of like an old McLaren M1A. And while the motor was impressive for what it was, it could only muster about 330 horsepower. Now, the 1968 Japan Grand Prix was held on May the 3rd, and the Nissans walked it. Now, to give you an idea of how big and significant the Japan Grand Prix was, it's kind of like the Japanese version of the Indianapolis 500. 3 R381s were entered. They took the top 2 qualifying positions and won the race. Toyota, meanwhile, had 4 cars, but the fastest of these only qualified 6th, and it was 5.5 seconds off pole. And the best placed Toyota in the race finished down in 8th and it was lapped 5 times. So Toyota had some work to do. Now, a new race on the Japanese calendar for 1968 was the World Challenge Cup Fuji 200. Now, this was an international Group 7 race and it included 10 cars from the Can-Am series, and hence the race became known as the Japan Can-Am. Unfortunately, the factory McLaren team and the Chaparral team didn't attend, and nor did Nissan, but Toyota did. They had 5 cars. Now, Mark Donoghue led most of the race in the Penske Racing McLaren M6B, but when his car broke, Peter Revson went on to win in the Shelby American M6B. The first Toyota was 4th, but it was 7 laps down on Revson. Nissan's 1969 Group 7 Challenger was called the R382, and now the Prince V12 was up and running, and it was hugely impressive. It was just under 6,000 cc's and with double overhead camshafts. So that's 4 camshafts and 48 valves. It had Lucas mechanical fuel injection and it produced around about 600 horsepower. The R382 also had a completely redesigned body and a redesigned chassis and a cam tail and an air scoop just above the motor. After its drubbing in 1968, Toyota came back swinging in 1969 with the 474S. And this was a massively improved car with a more modern, low-drag body. And the Yamaha V8 had now been stretched to 5,000 cc's. The Yamaha V8 had an alloy block, alloy heads, 4 camshafts, a flat plane crank, fuel injection, and a dry sump. It was a proper little jewel. And it was now producing about 500 horsepower. And a third Japanese player was Isuzu. Now, Isuzu is best known for making trucks, but they also dabbled in making cars. The Isuzu R7 was powered by a small block Chevy, and it used suspension and chassis components from Lola. In the absence of Nissan, Toyota managed to win a few races in early 1969, but in the 69 Japan Grand Prix, the R382s qualified 1st, 2nd and 3rd. Toyota arrived at the Grand Prix with 5 474Ss, and the first of these qualified 4th. And Nissan won the Grand Prix again, finishing 1st and 2nd, while Toyota was 3rd, 4th and 5th. And the top placed Toyota was a lap down at the end. The second running of the World Challenge Cup Fuji 200 had an even better Can-Am contingent. Once again, 10 cars made the trip, including the latest Lola T163s for Chuck Parsons and Peter Revson, plus the Ford G7A for John Cannon. But the best Can-Am car this time around was the Auto Coast TI-22, which was driven by Jackie Oliver. This car arrived late in the 1969 Can-Am, but it was immediately competitive against the dominant McLarens. So this race was a great benchmark for Toyota just to see how competitive they were. They brought 3 updated 474Ss with revised bodywork and low drag wings. And a 4th Toyota entrant was a McLaren M12, which received similar rear bodywork treatment and the same low drag wing, plus the same quad cam V8. Jackie Oliver qualified fastest and the McLaren Toyota was 2nd. Minoru Kawai was 3rd fastest in the leading 474S, ahead of Revson's Lola. And after Oliver dropped out, Kawai went on to win the race. So it was pretty impressive that in less than 2 years, the Japanese manufacturers were building Group 7 cars that were almost as fast as the top Can-Am cars. But they weren't done yet. Toyota's 1970 Group 7 Challenger was called the 578A. The Yamaha Quad Cam V8 was a work of art, but it couldn't be made any bigger than 5,000 cc's. That was its maximum. So that meant finding other solutions to gain more power. And the answer was turbocharging. So the Yamaha V8 was developed to run twin turbochargers, which massively increased output to 800 horsepower. Remember, the dominant team in Can-Am in 1970 was McLaren, and their big block Chevys were putting out about 750 horsepower. The 578A weighed just 650 kgs. So the little Toyota was looking like a proper weapon. It had a new alloy tube frame chassis and it was longer and wider, so things were looking really promising. But unfortunately for Toyota, the JAF cancelled the 1970 Japan Grand Prix after Nissan withdrew. More on that in a moment. But Toyota already had a new focus, the Can-Am series. Toyota made the announcement in August 1970 that they'd be entering the Can-Am in 1971. The 578A already had a better power to weight ratio than the dominant McLarens, and the turbocharged Yamaha V8 could apparently be tuned to 1000 horsepower if required. But then, just a few days after Toyota made their announcement, Minoru Kawai was killed testing a 578A at Suzuka. He was the second Toyota driver to be killed in a testing accident in just 18 months, and obviously this was pretty bad. And with that, Toyota pulled the pin, and the 578A was never raced. The 1970 Nissan R383 was a development of the R382. It carried a more efficient body, had a broader stance, and the radiators were moved to the hips. And it was lighter at 740 kilos. The Prince-developed V12 was now out to 7,000 cc's and producing 700 horsepower. But prior to the 1970 Japan Grand Prix, Nissan withdrew, citing government-enforced anti-smog objectives. And with that, the JAF switched focus to win a round of the Formula One World Championship, and the Japanese Grand Prix as we know it today began in 1976. But the R383 wasn't yet done. Nissan announced, like Toyota, that they'd be joining the Can-Am series in 1971. Remember, the Japanese manufacturers were using motorsport as a way to build brand loyalty and acceptance in the US. And with that, they redeveloped the 7-litre V12 with twin turbochargers, and early tests showed 900 horsepower. And there was potential for a whole lot more. But in late September, following Toyota's plans to cancel their Can-Am program, Nissan did likewise. With 2 fatalities in quick succession, both manufacturers opted for a more low-key approach and went production car racing instead. So that was it. The Can-Am, of course, ended in 1974. Porsche basically wiped the floor with all their competition. But maybe, if the Japanese turbo cars had arrived in 1971 as intended, maybe things could have turned out differently. But of course, we'll never know. Anyway, that's it for this episode, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little vid. If you did, please hit the like button and the subscribe button and tap that little bell thingy so you get a notification when I post up a new video. So we will catch you next time. Thanks again. See ya.